We're going to shift to Chris Bailey, and we have a poll to help start thinking in the transition from academic support to overall counseling and the mental health aspects that Chris will guide us through. So we're going to get this poll set up for you and send this along. This one properly is a one question choice versus multiple choice, where you're selecting the primary, which of the following is your student's primary concern since returning home. And Chris, you can take it away as you see the results coming in a little bit.
Okay.
Okay. About 5 more seconds and we'll share those results for you, Chris. And
All right.
Here they come.
Interesting. Isolation from others comes out as the top, with academics second and boredom third. Very interesting. So to introduce myself, I'm Dr. Christopher Bailey, and I am a psychologist and the director at the Counseling Center. And that list on the poll, it could have been much, much larger. There's lots of potential concerns and issues that students have. And I'd like to start by maybe going to the next slide. Great. So really, I want to echo a lot of themes that Allison has already touched on. This is an unprecedented event. We don't have experience, most of us, with pandemics, and neither do the students. So this is very much uncharted territory. And I think, though it's difficult to do, accepting a lot that we don't know. There's no playbook, there's no strategy that is going to get us through this unscathed, and acknowledging that the unknown is definitely a big part of what we're all struggling with in this situation. There's a lot of differences among people. So I mentioned individual differences on your screen. You might have multiple young people in your household, and they're all going to cope and deal with this situation in very different ways, and that's okay. There's no right or single way in coping with this situation. And I think there's also a role for looking at culture. Culture really plays in largely to our behavior. And there's going to be differences among people who are representing different cultures and how they might cope and deal with this, again, uncharted territory for most of us. I'd point out that there's been reports. I was just on a webinar yesterday of incidents of harassment and discrimination towards folks in the United States who identify as Asian. And so that's of concern. So culture definitely can play a role in all of this. The most, I think, crucial part of this is the next bullet. And that's looking at this as a set of losses. And when we experience loss in life, we have to undergo a grief process. Probably for most of the students, they're probably fairly early in that process, but talking with them and helping them to just talk about the fact that there's been these changes in their lives, that when they went away for spring break, if they went on a trip or they went back home, they didn't expect to not come back to campus. That wasn't the plan. And I think to be away from their roommates, their friends, to seeing their professors as regularly as they had before, to seeing staff and employees on campus, that was their routine, and that's been greatly disrupted. And if you think about seniors, that's compounded even more because there was, of course, many senior events that students were looking forward to. There are plans in motion to compensate for those changed plans, but certainly it's been an unfortunate ending of the semester for many of our seniors. And that leads to the next word, which is transitions. So because they've kind of lost some aspects of what they expected their semester to be, they've had to transition to this new idea of what the semester is. That means remote learning, what Allison spoke about, and it means transitioning back home. Now, perhaps many of them plan to go back home for the summer, but certainly it was a lot earlier than many of them had anticipated, and earlier than what you had anticipated as well. I wrote the word anxieties because I think anxiety takes many different forms. For students, there's the obvious anxiety, and that is they're afraid of the virus. They're afraid of contracting it. They're afraid of other people that they know and care about experiencing this virus. That's the obvious one. So there's a survival threat here to them and to you and to their grandparents and to people that they care about. That stimulates a lot of fear for them. The other major anxiety that you might be noticing in yourself and in them is the fear of the unknown. When does the pandemic end? Will it return? There's a lot of unanswered questions no one seems to know the answer to, and that's tough. That's tough to not know the answers. And that stimulates a lot of anxiety. Students, you also might be noticing, might experience a little bit of the opposite. They think they're invulnerable. They think this can't happen to them or people that they know and care about. But that, of course, is not true. But that's maybe that student's way of coping with this fearful situation. Career and financial challenges are very much part of this. So perhaps some students were on internship. That's been disrupted. For the seniors I spoke about, what is their job search process going to be like going forward? That's scary for them. Financial concerns. The students' plans for summer jobs. Will there be summer jobs? You might be experiencing significant financial worries yourself. Layoffs are happening with great frequency right now in our country and in the world. And that's scary for you and it's scary for them. Also, just being in the house all the time. While going for walks is great, and I certainly encourage that, we're not used to, most of us, being in our houses for this long. Many of us don't work at home, but we're trying to adjust to that. And that's new for them, new for you. And students can talk about feeling trapped in the house. And that's literally true in instances. Relationships, obviously a lot of changes there in terms of their campus relationships have to go through a transitional period now and go to a virtual way of connecting. And that's different from how they've experienced those relationships in the past, perhaps. The last word on the screen is the word somatic, and that refers to the body, physical changes. Not everyone is comfortable expressing themselves through words. Some people express their anxieties, their worries through their body, physically. So some students might sleep in, and that's not really their norm. Some students might shake, might experience stomach cramps, and these might be psychological in origin. They're expressing their worries and their discomfort through physical ways. On the bottom, I have a link there that goes into this information I'm sharing with you and a lot of other pieces of information. So I would encourage you to look at that link. And we can move on now to the next slide, okay, which is a poll question. So this is talking about the primary way that students are coping. Interesting. Academics is actually tied with media consumption. Very interesting. With some others there, exercise, great. So a lot of these are positive, not all of them. And it's not an exhaustive list. There's other ways of coping, but these are some major ones. So I think it's great to see academics there because particularly at this time of the semester, gearing up for finals, that's a very positive coping strategy. And it's nice to see avoiding or minimizing on the lower end. That's a more ineffective way of coping. Okay, we can move on to the next slide. Okay, so the counseling center itself is certainly available to students. And we're really modifying our approach because at a very basic level, students can no longer physically come in to our space. And we're not accustomed to that, and they're not accustomed to that. But social distancing is very necessary for our safety and for the safety of the students. So we're moving virtually now. I'd point out in the upper right part of the screen, if you have a very worrisome concern about your student, particularly around their safety, their physical safety, where you're concerned that they might kill themselves or seriously harm or kill someone else, those are some resources up on the upper right side of your screen for more emergency situations. You can see a text number there. That's a newer service that's available, and 2 phone hotlines that students can call. But in terms of the counseling center itself, we have introduced a telemental health program in the last month or so. And what that refers to is phone or video sessions that we can do with students. There are some limitations on that service. Some states do not permit us to do that, and that has to do with that state's laws. Luckily, a lot of the New England area states, including Rhode Island, do allow us to do that with students. So that is an option. If that's of interest to the student, they can call the counseling center's main number, and we will get back to them as soon as we can. For all students that are our current clients, we've actually contacted all of them already. Some students have told us they're not interested in telemental health with us. Perfectly fine to do, especially as we get into the summer months. So we've offered them referrals. The 2 major resources for referrals for students to see treatment providers near your house are both Psychology Today, which you see listed, and zencare.co. That is .co, C-O. There's no M at the end. I'll just briefly tell you about both of these services. Psychology Today is a set of profiles of therapists who are on there. They pay to be on that website because they're looking for new clients. So students can review the profiles, see if there's a good fit. The cost of each session is put right on the profile, and what health insurance is taken by that therapist is also put there. So that the copay, of course, would be a lot less than a full session price. But that's all described on that website on Psychology Today. The advantage of that website is there's therapists from all 50 states on that website. ZenCare, as you can see, doesn't have all 50 states. and it has a couple of other cities, as you can see on your screen. But the advantage of that website is it has video, prepared videos that were done by each therapist with prepared questions. So the student can see if there's a good fit by watching the videos. They also offer on that website a free 10 to 15 minute conversation with a therapist that can be scheduled at no cost. And again, for the therapist and the student to see if there's a good fit. So I recommend that students look at and review both sites before making a decision about who they might want to see. Students can also return to therapists they may have seen in the past. And a lot of therapists now are going to telemental health, so they can see the student, as I said earlier, by phone or by video chat. I also put down another website there, cyberguide.org. Some students don't want to see a therapist, and that's their choice. But some students might be open to apps. And there's a lot of apps out there, and it's really hard to decide which ones to spend money on, or that are going to even be valuable or secure. That website is recommended by my professional organization, the American Psychological Association. It reviews all the apps and gives ratings. So that's the guide and that website that I would strongly recommend for students or families to make decisions about what apps might be valuable. Our website, we've modified it quite a bit. And by our, I mean the counseling center's website. We're putting new content on our website every weekday. So we're really keeping pace with student concerns and needs. And we're trying to also reach students who might not want therapy or be interested in it at this time. So within recent days, we put access to a kitty cam, and by kitty, I do mean kittens. And I think it's pretty much impossible to look at that cam and not smile. I think it is very much impossible. We also put, every Monday, we're putting up meditations and relaxations strategies. The one we put up the other day is 5 minutes. That's all it is, 5 minutes. And it's very easy to learn. And students really like these sort of things. Videos, apps, all of that. We are on Facebook as well. And we're going to launch, I'm happy to announce that we're going to have a presence on Instagram, which is very popular among students, starting next week.